What's up, guys? Matt Weeda with Matt W Fishing, and I'm gonna break down the top 5 rods and reels and line, and most importantly, baits that you need to be throwing on Lake Okeechobee in the month of August. Okay, guys. August is probably the absolute toughest time to catch a bass on Lake Okeechobee. The reason is, look, May, you got the post spawn, you got a solid shad spawn, solid bluegill spawn, some bass are still spawning. The same kind of goes for June. You're obviously gonna start, if it was a cool spring, you're gonna have some more spawners go later into June. But if it's a warm spring, June is gonna be more of shad spawn, bluegill spawn, and the bass are going to take advantage of that. July, things start getting pretty tough because while you still have bluegill spawning, you still have shad spawning, it's just the water temperature gets so freaking hot that the metabolism of the fish goes up, and they're going to feed a lot more at night. They're going to feed a lot less during the middle of the day. Not saying you can't get bit in the middle of the day, but the willingness of a bass to feed during the middle of the day is going to go way down. And then August, just compound everything that happens in July. So I actually did a guide trip last Sunday, and I went actually in my client's boat. I brought a bag of some plastics, and I'm just going to go through what I literally have in this bag to go fish on Lake Okeechobee. First one, 5.25 big stinger. I really like this bait for flipping Okeechobee this time of year. The reason is, one, it's a big profile. We're going back to the fish's metabolism is really high. So when it eats something, it needs to count. Because look, a 5, 6, 7 pounder might be out there with some schoolies, but it's not going to get first opportunity at the bait, and it's going to have to work a lot harder than it should. So fish like that, they're going to try and target brim, bluegill, crappie, and baby tilapia. And the one thing that's going to imitate all those is just a big, flat profile bait. And the thing about this bait that's really good is I like to flip it on a 1/2 ounce. I'll go up to a 5/8 or a 3/4 if I really have to, but I try and stick with a 1/2 because this is a big piece of plastic, and that 1/2 will carry it pretty fast. But when you get around thicker Kissimmee grass, thicker reed heads, or a little bit windier conditions, you really got to flip that bait, shake it through there and stuff. And if you can have another rod with a 5/8 or 3/4 just to make you a little bit quicker and more efficient in that thicker stuff, it's going to be a lot better. But the one thing about the 1/2 ounce on this bait is when you flip it, that 1/2 ounce is going to let that bait glide a little bit more once you break through that cover. We are still, Lake Okeechobee is at about 13.8, somewhere around there last time I checked. So we do have a little bit of water. So that bait, once it comes through, and if you're fishing the outside edge or like halfway back where you would be flipping this, the water is going to be 2 foot or deeper. So this bait is going to have a little bit of time to glide. It's just a lot more natural profile. Big thing about this is the flapping legs. When that bait's coming through the water, it's kicking. It just looks really natural. There's other baits out there that are very similar to that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with your Action Innovations. I think it's a double wide beaver. That's a great bait as well. I'm personally sponsored by Gambler, so I use a Gambler product. This gets bit for me really good, so I stick with this. And usually when I'm flipping this bigger bait, I want that bigger profile. It's going to be the summertime, and I want action in my baits. That's the thing about summertime. You want a bigger profile, and you want action out of your baits. So let's go over to the rods. So you can see here, I have this already rigged up, just like I was saying. Got a one big bobber stop, 1/2 ounce sinker. The paint's kind of coming off of this one. Honestly, kind of like that this time of year. Fish are feeding on a lot of shad. If you got a little bit of silver shine in your sinker, don't sit down and retie a new one. Just leave that. Look, if the paint completely came off this sinker, I would keep flipping it, 100%. Got that big stinger like we were talking about. And here is the absolute biggest key with this bait, is the hook. I'll be honest with you guys, I flip a lot. I use a lot of Gamakatsu. I use a lot of, I'll use some owner products, like I like the treble hooks, the jungle hooks sometimes, like the cover shot. Gamakatsu, I use pretty much everything that they make. I'm a Gamakatsu fan. But when it comes to flipping this bait, I'm also gonna take it off just because it's already messed up. The biggest key to this bait is a 6/0 Trocar monster hook. This bait, it's a big hook. It's a big, thick diameter wire, so you're not gonna straighten this hook out trying to pull a big one out of cover. On Sunday, the biggest fish we caught was about a 6-pounder. Caught it doing exactly this. Flipped in a reed, a buggy whip head, and this handled it perfect. Snell knot always when you're flipping, at least for me. But something about this hook and the big stinger and the reaction big beaver is it just sits really. I'm just gonna rig it back up because when I go back to the lake, this is what I'm gonna be using. Something about this hook, and I've used other big hooks. I will preface that. I have used other large 6/0, 7/0 flipping hooks before, but something about this Trocar, and look, Gamakatsu doesn't make a hook this big. That's honestly why I don't use a Gamakatsu for this. Even the 5/0 Gami, the super heavy cover, you're gonna get hung up a lot, and your hook to land ratio on this is not gonna be the best. Hack Attack 6/0, still not quite right. Something about the shape, it's too much of just a regular J shape. This Gamakatsu, this Trocar just has enough of the right bend. I don't know what it is, don't try to explain it, but you could flip for hours on hours with this and get hung up very little. Because if you guys know, if you've ever flipped Okeechobee, if you've ever flipped Kissimmee grass, especially buggy whips, cattails, when you flip the bait in and you go to pull it out, there might be one that's broken sideways, or be a fork, or there'll just be a really tight concentration of these buggy whips, and you go to pull that bait out there and it'll just get hung up. Usually if you throw a little bit of slack and just kind of shake it out and reel, you can usually just kind of navigate it around all that stuff and it'll come right out. Doing that with that bait, that hook combination, guys, I get hung up less with that than I do any flipping bait I've ever used, any hook combination. Whether it's a little stinger with like a 3/0, regular stinger with a 3/0, or a burner crawl, that just goes through amazing. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a big profile, splits the reeds, but it just works. Basically, I will flip that the whole time. The only other thing I might flip with is a Gambler double weed guard jig. I like a 3/4, and I'll either cut the top off of that and put that on the back for a really big profile. I'll just put like a regular stinger or a flappy daddy. Works really well. We can't talk about Lake Okeechobee bass fishing without talking about the Poppin Frog. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping way ahead. Rod reel. I like to use an 8-to-1 reel. Some people are against an 8-to-1 reel for flipping, that there's not enough torque. I don't buy it, because look, when you flip, you hook the fish, you reel tight to get tight on the fish, and then you're pulling that fish out with a rod. If you're setting the hook and trying to grind that fish out of a big ball of grass, yeah, you're gonna have problems with any reel. You're not trying to winch the fish out with the reel, you're trying to pull the fish out with the rod. Just what I do. This is a Senko Sticks. This is a custom model. Alex provides this rod in the BTO series. This is a Punchaholic. He calls it the 2.0 because it's the second one he ever made for me. This rod is solid. A lot of people will reach for a reed beater. I really love the Punchaholic for all my flipping applications on Lake Okeechobee. I just like a longer rod. I like having the power. It's just what works for me. If you guys want a little bit shorter rod that's easier to navigate through the grass, go with a reed beater. And 65-pound Suffix 832, 100% of the time. I don't ever do 50. I don't give myself that chance to break off. 80 is ridiculous. You don't need 80. You break off 80 on a fish, you're just like 300 pounds built out of meat and muscle, and you're probably breaking everything else in your boat, if I'm being honest. 65-pound braid, all you need. The next rod reel bait combo that I like to use on Okeechobee, look, we can't have a conversation about Okeechobee most any time of the year without bringing up the Poppin Frog. This is a Gambler Poppin Frog. As you can see, I actually opened the hooks up a little bit with my pliers. I just like to get that clearance of the hook point and from the bait. That's just me. I leave the legs alone because I'm popping this bait, I'm chugging it hard, and I like the legs to kind of drag it from going too far. So I want to pop, I want the bait moving, making action, but I don't want it going left to right and doing crazy stuff. And listen, if you need to walk it, you can still walk it with these long legs. It's not a big deal. My go-to colors this time of year, Killer Gill is literally on my rod every single time, 95% of the time. It just works. I mean, just the color of it, it imitates a brim, it imitates a shad, it kind of imitates a little bit of everything. It can even imitate a tilapia. It's got kind of the same colors. It's just one of those in-between natural colors that just works everywhere. I like reddier a lot. Sometimes when they get really heavy on bluegill, especially bedding bluegill, sometimes that reddier will really shine. I've seen times where they're boiling this bait, put on a reddier, and they take the bait down and you get great hookups. I've seen it be the opposite. I've seen where out there reddier, they're boiling that, put on the Killer Gill, and they take this thing down. Sun gills also honestly are a really good color as well. If you're starting on a shad spawn in the morning, or you're around a lot of shad fish on the outside. GoPro died, had to go grab a cable. Like I said, if you're around shad fish, that yellow back with the blue line on the side, that Okie shad works really good. Actually, got a big old box of frogs. I can show you what I'm talking about. This dude right here. Actually, when I'm around shad fish, I will cut the legs fairly short, just because I want to. If I'm around a shad spawn, I don't want to move that bait too fast, and sometimes I will do quite a bit of walking. Straight white works really good as well. Let's see if I can find. I ain't got too many. I ain't got any sun gills. Honestly, this color right here works really good this time of year. This is just, honestly, forget the color. I think it's Purple Flash or something. This is a really good, really natural bluegill imitating bait. But guys, if you don't know, the Poppin Frog has probably won 60% of tournaments on Lake Okeechobee in the last 8 years, I would say, since 2016. So it's really hard not to throw this. I'm gonna throw this around dollar pads. I'm gonna throw this at the base of buggy whips, especially towards the back, like that 1 to 3 foot contour line on your map, on like your Navionics or your C map. If you look, you can still see a couple lines. Usually if you're towards the back right now throwing this bait, you're gonna find some really big bluegill eaters, because what you got to think is on the outside edge, those fish have to compete with a lot of smaller fish. So a bluegill is probably one of the highest protein and least energy. Like a bass doesn't need to use a lot of energy to chase down a bluegill compared to a shad on the outside edge. So I feel like them bigger fish are going to be towards the back feeding on bluegill. The retrieve, I'm going to throw it out there and I'm going to play around with it. This time of year, I really like a chug, 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 just really aggressive. Play around with speed, play around with cadence. Sometimes it's a pop, let it sit for 3 seconds. Sometimes it's a pop, let it sit for 10 seconds. It also depends on the day. If you're fishing a team tournament and you're both looking for a big bite and you're both throwing a frog, play around a little bit with colors, like have one guy throw red ear, have one guy throw Killer Gill, have one guy chugging it, have one guy fishing it slow. You kind of want to play around with it a little bit. All right. Oh, I keep skipping the rod part. Again, 8-to-1 reel. These fish will blow up on your bait and swim towards you sometimes, or the biggest reason I like to use an 8-to-1 is when they get you around the pads. When that fish blows up, you set the hook and you're tight on that fish, they don't always get tight and swim away from you. Sometimes they go sideways to them pads, and they're cutting pads, and now your line is going straight from your rod around 25 pads, and that fish, that 7-pounder, swimming that way. You already have, hopefully have a pretty good hook in that fish. So at this point, you want the fastest reel possible. 10 to 1, I've never used a 9 or 10 to 1. Don't think I ever will need to, just because you do lose torque there, and this you want a little bit of torque. These Shimano, I use Shimano Curados and Chronarchs almost exclusively, and the SLXs. Not sponsored by them, I'm just a Shimano guy. These reels have really good internal components, and they have really good torque. So when that fish eats, starts taking off to the side, I just I'm doing everything in my power to get my line tight on that fish. So I'm just trying to cut through, because your line's gonna start cutting through them pads, and you want to pick up as much slack, because you don't want any slack in your line at all. Because when that fish feels slack, guess what he's gonna do? He's gonna feel something different. He's gonna try and jump. You don't want him doing that in the pads when your line's around all kinds of stuff. One of the biggest lessons I learned on throwing a fast gear ratio reel through pads was an ABA that I won back in 2019. I was on the south end of the lake. There was a ton of fish down there. I was throwing a black and blue swim jig. I was just throwing it out, eating it. And I was throwing, I don't have one nearby, but one of them black and white Chronarchs. I still have 3 of them. Amazing reels, great reels. But the 7 to 1 on that reel, I noticed, is a little bit slower than most other 7 to 1s I've ever used. I don't know what it is. It's like a gearing thing. It is a 7.0 to 1, so it is just 7 to 1. It's not a 7.5 to 1, which means it picks up the spool 7.5 times compared to one crank of the reel. So it's just a little bit slower reel, but that's what I had at the time. That's what I had to work with. Didn't really think about it. I'd throw it out there, pretty good long cast, be reeling it. Big one would blow up on it. I'd set the hook, and they would start tearing left and right through the pads. And I'm literally reeling as fast as I can to pick up that line. And I did lose a couple. I lost probably 2 or 3 fish over 6 pounds that day because of that. So the next weekend, I went back with an 8 to 1. Had great success. Went back the next weekend to those fish. Caught 36 pounds with my buddy Nick. It was a great time. Most important part is the rod. This is a 7.3 Royal Flush Senko 6. This is a custom. You can tell by the little Kermit cartoon and the Kermit's Last Stand. That's kind of my little deal. Obviously, this rod is available. Same exact blank in the BTO series. A lot more affordable. Rod still gets the job done. I mean, I really love this rod. I throw a lot of stuff on it, but the Frog is my #1 choice. That's my #1 choice when I go throw a Frog. Honestly, it's my only choice. All right, what else do we got here? So I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. This is just what I happen to have tied on because I broke my Yo-Zuri Rattling Vibe. I'm a big Yo-Zuri Rattling Vibe fan as far as lipless baits go. But I just threw this in my box, threw it around. I wasn't around any schooling fish or, you know, groups of fish, so it didn't really matter. But you want a 1/2 or 5/8 ounce lipless crankbait this time of year. Color doesn't seem to be a big deal. The water seems to be a little bit off color right now, like about 1 foot of visibility just about everywhere you go. Some places the water color's different, but the water clarity itself is the same, if that makes any sense. Color's the same, or color's different. It'll go from green to like dark, almost like a reddish black, but it'll still be about that much visibility. Like you dip this bait in the water and it disappears about 1 foot down. Fish are still eating in that stuff, so don't be scared to throw this out there. But lipless crankbait, super great for schooling fish. If you get on the edge of like a ditch or a canal mouth or something, or if maybe you find like a bluegill beds offshore or a hard spot or something, you can't beat a lipless crankbait. I throw it on 17 on Lake Okeechobee, 17 or 18. You don't need to go lighter. You're only fishing in 2 to 4 feet of water most of the time, so you don't need a heavier line to keep it way up shallow, or you don't need a lighter line to keep it down deeper. So 17's good. You're not going to break fish off. That's the biggest thing. I throw this on a 7.4 Chatter Trap 1.0. This is a little bit softer rod. I like a softer rod whenever I can. This is a 7.4, like a light, medium, heavy, moderate, fast. This rod flexes deep through the blank, but I'm telling you guys, this rod will land you more fish 100%. 100%. I absolutely love this rod. I personally don't throw a chatterbait on it. I have Chatterbait 2.0 or Chatter Trap 2.0, a little bit heavier rod. I personally like for a chatterbait because you're dealing with a single hook, but trap, 7.4 Chatter Trap, 17-pound line. I like to throw this on a 7-to-1 gear ratio. If I throw an 8-to-1, I tend to overwork the bait. 6-to-1, you're reeling too fast. Or if they come up schooling, you need to be able to pick up a lot of line to get back out there. This is actually a 7.6-to-1. Listen, the only number that matters is the first and the last one. And the last one's always going to be a 1. The first one is always going to be a 6, 7, or an 8, or whatever you're throwing. But 7.6 means your spool turns 7.6 times to 1 turn of the reel handle. So that's what 7.6 to 1 means. A lot of guys will be like, oh, I'm throwing a 7 to 6, or, you know, whatever. And you know, that's what it means. A lot of people really don't know that, but that's what it means. As far as retrieve goes, it's hard to beat a straight reel, honestly. I like a yo-yo. When you know you're around a group of fish, like you're schooling, or you have a spot where you think they're at, fluttering that thing and yo-yoing it, you know, fairly aggressive, like that works really good. Or honestly, reeling it and just kind of snapping it every now and then, it'll really trigger the fish. I've seen that where that makes a big difference sometimes. All right, now we're starting to have some fun. Thing about summertime is it's always topwater time. I like to throw this on a 7-foot, I honestly don't know what it's called in Alex's line, but it's a topwater rod. I do believe he's got like a 6'10", medium heavy, moderate fast. I'll drop the link in the comments below when I go on the website and find out what exactly the dynamics of the rod is, because this is a custom, but it's built on the same blank that he uses on the BTO series. This is a 8-to-1 reel. I like to use an 8-to-1 reel because all you're doing with a topwater is you're working with the rod and you're just picking up slack with the reel. That's all the reel does, is it pulls the bait back in, picks up slack, and reels the fish in. That's literally all it's doing. The reel speed has nothing to do with the retrieve of the bait. 50-pound braid always on almost every topwater I throw. Maybe if I'm throwing a prop bait, I'll throw a 20-pound mono, just because that front prop will mess with you. But as far as most every topwater I throw, 50-pound Suffix 832. I will tie using an Alberto knot that you guys can find in one of my previous videos. A very short, like 2-foot section of 20 or 25-pound mono. If I'm on like a natural lake, or not a natural lake, but a lake up north where I'm not trying to pull fish out of grass, I'll probably go with 17. But Lake Okeechobee, we got big fish, we got heavy cover, and we have tarpon and snook in there too, so I don't want to lose my bait. 20-pound mono almost all the time. Honestly, sometimes I'll put fluorocarbon if I don't have any mono. It's such a short section, it doesn't really hurt the bait. This is an Excite Baits. It's a topwater walking bait. A Vixen's really good. The old school style Zara Spook works really good as well. I usually put a little bit bigger hook in the back. This is a number 2 feather treble. It's just gonna, you know, because you hook a fish in that back hook, you want to land it. You don't want to have some tiny hook that, you know, fish is gonna bend out. This is I think there's a Berkeley Fusion. As long as it's like a 1X diameter treble, you'll be fine. You don't need nothing crazy. I do have my drag set on this. I would say like medium. So if a fish, you know, pulls or runs, it can pull a little bit of drag. Always tie a loop knot. Like we went over the last video, this is a Canoe Man loop knot. See how the tag is going back towards the bait? That's not gonna sit, that's not gonna be out there catching all kinds of grass and stuff. This is gonna come through the grass really well. This color right here is like, it's likened to like a head and zero spook Okie shad, which actually means Oklahoma shad, not Okeechobee shad like a lot of people think. But this color, probably #1 topwater walking bait color on Lake Okeechobee. I'll show you a couple other colors that I'll use, but I'll be honest, I probably use that color most of the time, unless I get in some really clear stuff. And you can tell I like throwing topwater spooks. I literally have a box just for spooks. Like, I might go with something real natural like this. Like, this is a chartreuse shad, but you can tell it's translucent, super natural. This is a really natural color as well. If you get around like really clear water, where the fish are being kind of picky, throw that. As you can see, this is your super spook and Okie shad. I got like a natural shad color here. I've got another translucent color here. I've got a bluegill color here. Play around with it. If you're further towards the back of, you know, towards the hard line, there's not going to be a lot of shad back there. You're going to be dealing with a lot more brim and, you know, baby tilapia, stuff like that. So maybe something, maybe something like this bluegill pattern will work better for you, or something like one of these more natural patterns. If you're fishing in the morning around a shad spawn, that color will work, this Okie shad. Maybe a bone. And I like all my topwaters. Biggest key, and I'm talking, I've seen the difference. The biggest key to all these topwaters, if I can get them unhung here, because we've got quite the cluster going, is you want a knocking sound. Like, this is a striking, but I always get that one hard knocker. That's super key. Like, this is a 6 cents bait. I've caught a bunch of fish on this. One knocker. One bait that, you know, I bought a couple of them, like that one bluegill color you saw there, and I haven't done that great with it. I don't know if I don't throw it enough, or I haven't been around the right fish, but this is a Demiki Rambler. It's got a little bit of a little Macarena, a little rattle to it. I don't catch jack diddly on that thing. Don't know why. They don't eat it as hard. They don't eat it as good. Guys, it is sweltering, even under this canopy here. Yeah, but you want that noise in your spook. So we're down to 4 rods. 2 of them are topwaters. 1 of them's a trap. 1 of them is a flippin bait. And here's where it's honestly hard to pick a 5th bait, because it all depends where you're at or where you're around. So we're gonna say we're gonna use 6. We're gonna bump it up to 6 rods. So my number 5 bait, and we're gonna do a bonus one after this, is a swim jig. Think about this time of year is you have a shad spawn going on in the morning. I mean, we're gonna have a shad spawn going on until the end of September basically, and to not take advantage of the shad spawn would be very foolish. So I like to use 5/16 or a half. I'm more partial to like the 3/8 sizes, so a 5/16 works for me. A 5/16 Gambler Goat swim jig. I like the ghost color. It's kind of like got some gray, some more translucent white. I don't like stark white. I mean, this shows up really good in the water though too. A White Lightning Gambler Burner Crawl. I want something low profile that these fish can get in their mouth. I mean, this bait's got a big 5/0 Siwash hook in it. So when that fish gets your bait, you're gonna get that hook in them and you're gonna land them. 50-pound braid for a swim jig. I used to do 65. And on my frog, I do 50 as well. Also used to use 65 on that. Started playing around with 50. Haven't broken off since I switched to 50, so I go with 50. It's easier to cast. You can make longer casts. It's an overall better deal. An 8-to-1 reel. This is a Corrado DC. It's just It's just what I use, fits in my hand really well. Allows me to shake the bait around. 7'3" weed eater. This is also just a 7'3" heavy action rod. Great for a swim jig. It's got a little bit of a moderate fast bend to it, but it's more of a fast action 7'3" heavy. Like I said, I'll throw that white swim jig in the morning around a shad spawn. You really want to look for Kissimmee grass. That's your biggest #1 best bet for finding fish on a shad spawn. It's easier for the fish to come through the grass and get your bait, and your hook to land ratio is going to be better. And just the shad tend to like the Kissimmee grass because they can get up in it, whereas buggy whips, it just doesn't seem, you can still catch them out of the buggy whips. I've caught great fish, great sized big ones out of the buggy whips, but Kissimmee grass seems to be a little bit better. If I'm a little bit more open water, I will do some Alabama shake to my bait just to give it, you know, just to kind of knock the appearance down so the fish can't see it quite as well. Now, as we get past about 9:30 in the day, in the afternoon or in the morning, I'm going to start sliding in and targeting bluegill feeding fish. That's what I'm going to go with, like my black and blues, like my green pumpkin oranges. And I just like to match the trailer to the bait. I'm not big on mix matching the trailer to the bait. I always try and be as natural as physically as possible when I'm choosing bait colors. Unless I'm in muddy water, then you know you can alternate. But Okeechobee bass get a lot of pressure, and I just like to stay as natural as possible. So white, black and blue, and green pumpkin base are the 3 colors that you need in the line in your lineup. Only 3 colors you really need. 5/16 ounce size. Okeechobee is a very shallow lake, so you don't need to go any more. You know, you don't need a 1/2 ounce. If you like a 1/2 ounce, if you're a 1/2 ounce guy, you like more control of the bait, you want to manipulate it with your reel and your rod more, throw a 1/2 ounce. I like the 5/16. And we'll just call this the bonus bait, but we literally cannot have a conversation about bass fishing in shallow water, whether it's Okeechobee, Chickamauga, Lake Gunnersville, wherever, without including a chatterbait. It's like a broken freaking record, man. I mean, you literally cannot go fishing without a chatterbait, because while this is not my favorite time of year to throw a chatterbait, it will still play in certain situations. God forbid you find some submerged grass somewhere in Lake Okeechobee. But you can reel this around buggy whips, around reeds, around the edges of Kissimmee grass. You can throw this around schooling fish as well. This is just a good overall bait. If you get around a flat that's got some bluegill beds on it, possibly throw this thing around. I like to throw either 3/8 or 1/2. It all depends on the depth of water, the speed that the fish want it. You gotta play around with that a little bit. This is like a chartreuse white color, but it's kind of toned down. I've got my favorite color that Gambler makes for imitating shad is a Hammond's herring. This is a Little Easy. I throw the Little Easy on the back of a chatterbait like 75% of the time. The other percentage, I'll throw like a Komodo style bait. And this, just have it on deck and throw it wherever you think you need to throw it. Chatterbait is a very versatile bait and it'll work just about everywhere. I like to throw my baits on a 7-to-1 reel. This is a 7-to-1 Corrado K. Throw it on 20-pound fluorocarbon or 17-pound fluorocarbon. You do not need to go lower than that. I know guys throw it on 14, 15. Really good anglers, but I don't. Certain situations, you may need to throw it on braid, like if you're around a lot of dollar pads. If you go like a Project Z weedless chatterbait and you want to reel it through them pads, you can do that as well. But I typically just stick with the just a normal chatterbait. 7'3" Chatter Trap 2.0. This is actually a custom, but this is the same blank as a Chatter Trap 2.0. I like that a little bit heavier rod just when I'm throwing a chatterbait. It is a single hook bait. You are throwing it around a little bit more cover, and it does attract a little bit bigger fish. You want to pull the fish around away from that. I like a 7-to-1 reel as well, just because. And there's 2 gear ratios I'll throw on a chatterbait. I never throw an 8-to-1. I don't ever see the need for it, so I don't throw it. 7-to-1 gives you a lot of control, a lot of speed, but if you want to slow down and just give it a regular retrieve, you're gonna get bit. I'll go more to like a 6-to-1 reel in the winter time or around the spawn, just to slow that bait down and keep it around the beds longer. And it just seems like a 6-to-1 gets you bit a little bit better. Honestly, overall, I mean, look at Brett Height, best chatterbait fisherman on earth, throws a 6-to-1 exclusively, I do believe. So when I started throwing a chatterbait in the beginning, I started off with a 6-to-1, and I honestly got bit a lot. I have progressed to a 7-to-1 just because I like the more control. And if I do notice that I'm in the boat with somebody who's throwing a 6-to-1 or if they're reeling it slower, I'll just reel it slower. It's not that big of a deal. 7-to-1's that perfect middle ground. If I were to get one gear ratio reel to throw everything and anything on, even cranking, I would just go to the 7-to-1. You just have a lot more control. But those are my 6 top Okeechobee baits, rods, reel combos. And I think if you guys go to the lake and you have all of those rods on your deck, you'll be able to cover almost any situation. And you guys are going to notice that I did not include a worm, a burner worm or nothing like that. This time of year, I'm just not a big worm fisherman. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you're around those dollar pads, you want to slow down and drag it in and around the pads, around the edges and the holes, you can do that. Throw it around with like 20-pound fluoro or 50-pound braid, but GoPro's overheating under the canopy. That's how hot it is. I mean, look at this. Look how much I'm sweating just sitting here. Holy cow. I did not realize how much I'm sweating. But yeah, a burner worm, 50-pound braid, 20-pound fluorocarbon can definitely be an option, especially with your fishing with more beginner fishermen. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. I had to come inside the garage because it's absolutely brutal outside. Could not freaking, I'm just absolutely drenched in sweat. I don't sweat a bunch, so for me to sweat this much, it's a lot. Hopefully this video gave you a good idea of, you know, at least to have a good starting point of what to tie on next time you go on Lake Okeechobee. Don't forget to like the video, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.